Usually when you set out to build something,
Sure.
let's say you're putting together a piece of custom furniture in your garage, there is this very basic, fundamental assumption at play. You get to use a toolbox.
Right, precisely. I mean, you have a physical place to just put your hammer down.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a drawer to organize your screws by size. You have a workbench. You aren't, forced to hold every single piece of wood, every tool, and every nail in your hands all at the exact same time.
Right. It's foundational to how we work. You gather your materials, you put them in your garage, and you just, pull them out when you need them. It's clean. It's predictable.
Yeah, very structured.
But imagine if you couldn't do that. What if every single time you needed a single nail, you had to walk to a mountain, mine the iron ore, find a furnace to smelt it into a bar, and forge that nail on an anvil right there on the spot?
Oh, wow.
Because you physically are not allowed to put anything down, ever.
Yeah, the moment you drop it, it's just gone.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like an absolute nightmare for most people. But today, we're looking at a stack of notes that flips that nightmare entirely on its head. So, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We are exploring a really fascinating document today titled Tommy RuneScape Podcast.pdf. And our mission. Well, we're taking a journey into the mind of a player known as Tommy the Tinkerer.
It's a great deep dive.
And while his canvas is a video game, you do absolutely not need to be a gamer to understand this. Because what we're really looking at today is a masterclass in psychology and, systems design. It's about how to view harsh limitations not as roadblocks, but as creative puzzles.
And, the context for these limitations is really crucial here. Tommy plays a game called Old School RuneScape, but he doesn't play it normally.
Right, he plays a specific mode.
Yeah, he plays on this uniquely punishing difficulty setting called Ultimate Ironman, or UIM for short. And the defining rule of this mode is staggering, honestly. You have a complete inability to use banks.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because in a game that is famous for having thousands of different items, swords, logs, fish, ores, potions, Tommy has zero storage vault.
None at all.
He only has his inventory backpack, which holds exactly 28 items. That is it. Everything else he owns, he carries, or he loses. And in his notes, Tommy has this foundational quote that genuinely blew my mind.
Oh, the hidden mechanic one?
Yes. He writes, "Every limitation is just a hidden mechanic waiting to be discovered. Because he has absolutely zero storage, his entire reality is governed by friction."
Yeah, friction is really the perfect word to describe his environment. In his notes, he refers to his restrictions as friction surfaces.
Friction surfaces, that's such a good term.
Right. These are basically places where different game systems rub against each other and force him to make interesting decisions. He isn't just, building a character to go hit monsters. He is trying to figure out how all the disjointed pieces of this massive virtual world desperately want to connect to one another.
I was trying to picture what this actually feels like, and the best way I can describe it to you listening is to think about cooking a massive 5-course Thanksgiving feast.
A big feast.
Right, but you have to cook it in a tiny studio apartment with 1 foot of counter space and a single cutting board.
Oh, man. That sounds stressful.
It is. You can't prep all your ingredients at once and set them aside in little glass bowls. You have to constantly process and clean as you go. You chop the onion, you immediately put it in the pan, you wash the cutting board, you grab the next vegetable. You are constantly managing the physical space.
That kitchen analogy is exactly how Tommy operates, but he formalizes it into what he calls his core early game identity loop. Because storage is the permanent problem, the storage problem becomes the game itself.
Wow, okay. So how does he actually play that?
Well, his brain is always looking for a specific cyclical rhythm. It goes gather, then process, then store, or honestly, more likely fail to store, then adapt and repeat.
And since he can't realistically store things, he relies heavily on a concept he calls compression loops, which is just brilliant.
It really is. The compression loops are where you start to see his genius. He's constantly asking himself, what systems compress raw, bulky value into fewer, more useful items?
Give me an example of that.
So early on, a basic compression loop looks like catching a raw fish. Instead of carrying it around and wasting one of his precious 28 backpack slots, he immediately finds a tree, chops it down, lights a fire, cooks the fish, and consumes it on the spot to restore his energy.
It's forced minimalism, but it's totally weaponized for progression. To bring this into the real world, think about your own email inbox.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Most of us read an email, think, oh, I'll deal with that later, and store it in a folder. It clogs up the system. A compression loop is opening the email, making a decision, replying immediately, and deleting it. The raw material is transformed and utilized before it can become clutter.
That's a great way to look at it. And because Tommy manages his space this way, he intentionally ignores what the rest of the player base considers the fastest or most efficient routes to level up.
Right, because fast doesn't work for him.
Exactly. If an average player wants to level up mining, they go to the biggest mine and just drop all the ore on the ground over and over to maximize their experience points. Tommy doesn't do that at all.
No, he gravitates toward very specific geographical areas in the game, like the Lumbridge to Draenor to Varrock Triangle, or a desert town called Al-Kharid.
Yeah, and he doesn't go to those places for the best experience points.
He goes there for what he terms system density.
Exactly. System density over raw efficiency. That Lumbridge triangle he mentions, he calls it his starter sandbox engine.
Sandbox engine. I love that.
It isn't just a place with a lot of trees. It has a high density of diverse resource nodes, beginner quests, and incredibly short travel distances between them. He also talks about the Dwarven Mine. He loves it because there is a copper and tin mine right next to a furnace to smelt the metal, which is right next to an anvil to forge it into tools.
He actually uses this incredible terminology for these dense areas, comparing them to founding a workshop in Manheim. Now, if you are familiar, Manheim isn't a place in this game.
Right, it's a concept.
Yeah, it's a conceptual term he uses, evoking this idea of a mythological, self-made sanctuary, perfectly tailored campus where chaos gets translated into order. But reading all this, I have to admit, with all this constant friction, burnout seems inevitable.
You definitely think so.
I mean, I have to assume he's motivated by some massive, shiny reward at the end of these early grinds, right?
You'd think so, but it's actually the exact opposite. What's fascinating here is his entirely flipped perspective on quests. In Runescape, the average player slogs through a quest because they want the massive chunk of experience points at the end, or, they want to unlock a powerful new sword.
Right, the loot.
Yeah, the loot. But Tommy does not care about the rewards. He only cares about what new rule a quest unlocks.
So it's less about the destination and entirely about the engine that gets him there.
Yes, exactly. For example, he looks at early quests like Doric's Quest or Daddy's Home. To anyone else, those are just tedious chores to check off a list to get the reward. To Tommy, they are mechanical seeds.
Mechanical seeds.
Yeah. Doric's Quest allows him to use an anvil that is physically closer to a specific mine, injecting a brand new spatial synergy into his world. Daddy's Home is a quest that literally teaches you the mechanics of building furniture, planting the seed for him to eventually build his own house.
Wow.
He isn't asking, how do I progress fastest? He is asking, what underlying mechanism have I not understood yet?
And that transition in his thinking is crucial.
Yeah.
Because he has completely automated these early survival loops because he understands the rules so well that he doesn't have to think about them anymore.
Right.
His cognitive load drops.
Completely.
He suddenly has the mental bandwidth to zoom out and start building permanent infrastructure. And that shift in mindset is exactly what triggers his transition into his definition of the mid-game.
And it's important to note that Tommy's definition of the mid-game has absolutely nothing to do with having high combat stats or shiny, expensive armor.
No, not at all.
For him, the mid-game is triggered purely by reaching a construction skill level of around 40 to 50.
Why construction? Because that level allows him to finally build a functional player-owned house, or POH. This house is everything to his strategy.
It really is the core of it.
It acts as a teleport foundation so he can zip around the world map and essentially becomes a mechanical substitute for the storage banks he isn't allowed to use. You can store specific tools and outfits in the house.
Yeah.
But here's where I have to push back a little on Tommy's method.
Oh, let's hear it.
According to the notes, it takes Tommy somewhere between 50 to 80 hours of playtime to reach this mid-game state with his house. The average Ultimate Ironman player doing the exact same content following standard guides takes maybe 40 to 70 hours.
Right, he's significantly slower.
Yeah. I get that he's experimenting, but spending an extra 10 to 40 hours tinkering and intentionally slowing down just sounds like a net loss of time. It sounds like spending 3 hours perfectly organizing your desk before you sit down to write a single email.
I see why you'd say that. On the surface, the math looks bad. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, Tommy isn't wasting time. He's investing in a brilliant counter-concept that he calls fail-state efficiency.
Okay, I get fail-state efficiency in theory, but spending an extra 40 hours just in case you mess up, how does he justify that math? 40 hours is a full work week.
He justifies it because he is calculating the psychological toll of failure, not just the temporal toll. Think about the normal player. If a normal player takes the fastest, most hyper-efficient route, their margin for error is exactly 0. If they miss a click, or forget an item, or die, the trip is ruined. They have to start all over. It's incredibly frustrating, and that frustration leads to burnout, which eventually leads to quitting.
So their engine stalls completely.
Right. But Tommy deliberately prototypes weird routes and seemingly inefficient combinations so that his training methods give multiple outputs.
Give me an example.
Well, if he is trying to level up his construction but he runs out of money or drops an item, his route is designed so that he is simultaneously standing next to a forest where he can chop wood or an area where he can train magic. To Tommy, imperfection is not a setback. It is just data that feeds a secondary loop.
So even when the primary system fails, a safety net system catches him. He's never actually stopped.
Precisely. The engine never stalls. And this ties directly into how he permanently reduces his own cognitive load. He aims for what he calls tool independence.
Yeah, the notes mention he stabilizes his access to the basics, a pickaxe, an axe, a needle and thread. It sounds incredibly mundane.
It does sound mundane, but it's huge.
Right, because when you remember, he only has 28 inventory slots. Dedicating a slot to a pickaxe 24/7 is a massive sacrifice. So knowing exactly how to effortlessly manifest a pickaxe at a moment's notice, knowing which specific shop to run to or which specific monster drops it, is a massive relief on the brain.
Exactly.
He doesn't have to worry about losing it because he knows the exact mechanism to recreate it.
And he views the game's currency the exact same way. Most players hoard gold pieces. They want to see that numerical wealth go up. But Tommy views money not as a hoarded number, but as a flow.
Because keeping a stack of gold takes up a precious inventory slot.
Exactly. So he utilizes things like alchemy loops. Alchemy is a literal magic spell in the game that allows you to turn an item, say, a useless sword dropped by a goblin, directly into gold pieces right there in your backpack.
Oh, that's incredibly useful for him.
Yeah, he doesn't care about having a million gold pieces stored away. He cares about having the ability to reproduce 10 to 50,000 gold on demand whenever he needs it through this magical alchemy. Money isn't stored. It is entirely recreatable.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because he has built this deep, failure-proof understanding of these individual systems. The crafting, the alchemy, the teleporting he graduates.
Yeah.
He stops playing a linear video game and moves into what he calls system orchestration.
This is the late game mastery. He is no longer running simple loops or even chains of loops. He is acting as a conductor for an orchestra of ecosystems.
The self-sustaining machine. That's his ultimate goal. He wants an account where every single skill mechanically feeds another. His 28-slot inventory transforms from a mere backpack into what he describes as a puzzle grid.
A puzzle grid, yeah.
It's a language he learns to speak fluently. Every single slot in that backpack is intentional, and every item represents potential energy.
He starts looking at raw materials and asking, what can this transform into? How many different outcomes does this one log of wood represent? And because of this profound shift in perspective, his idea of achievement completely diverges from the normal gaming community.
Oh, this is hands down my favorite part of the notes. If you ask a veteran Runescape player what their proudest achievement is, they will usually name an insanely rare drop from a terrifying boss.
Oh, for sure.
Something that required pure luck and maybe 1,000 hours of grinding the same monster to acquire.
But Tommy's achievements are entirely rooted in meaning over meta. He lists his favorite items, and they are shockingly basic, like a crystal saw?
A saw.
Yeah. To a high-level player, a saw is boring. But to Tommy, it represents pure utility because it mechanically boosts his construction level, allowing him to build better house upgrades earlier. He loves the graceful outfit because it physically reduces his character's weight, giving him freedom of movement and fluidity to run his loops longer.
And the Amulet of Glory. He specifically notes that it is a self-made Amulet of Glory. Now, he could have found a way to buy it, or he could have killed monsters until one dropped it. But he didn't.
He did it the hard way.
He manually trained his crafting level to 80. He trained his magic level to enchant it. He mined the specific gem. He smelted the gold. Why? Because the item itself isn't the trophy to him. The trophy is the fact that he built the entire internal system that made creating it possible.
It's the difference between buying a luxury sports car and building the entire manufacturing factory that produces the sports car. One shows you have money, The other shows you possess ultimate mechanical comprehension.
So what does this all mean for how he actually plays the game at the highest level? Well, Tommy shares his wildest achievement, and it genuinely made me laugh out loud when I read it. At one point, late in his journey, he wiped his account down to almost nothing.
He threw it all away.
He intentionally threw away his hard-earned items, purely to prove a point to himself, that he could reconstruct his entire vast system from scratch.
For him, the psychological safety of knowing that his foundation is bulletproof is far more satisfying than having an inventory full of expensive gear. It proves that his Manheim campus, his perfectly tuned house and mental infrastructure, is indestructible. He didn't just memorize a guide, he internalized the physics of his world.
He describes this ultimate state of play as a specific memory. It's not getting a rare drop, it's not hitting a high score, he just calls it the click.
The click. It's that profound, almost meditative moment where everything finally connects. His player-owned house works perfectly as a teleport nexus and workshop. His compression loops function seamlessly. His inventory grid makes total sense.
Wow.
He writes in his notes, "I'm not struggling anymore," and I realize, oh, I understand this game now.
He transcends the mechanics. He's no longer thinking about what to do next, he's just executing. He reaches this state where his combat skills are naturally sitting around level 90 to 100. And for context, if you don't play, the absolute maximum cap for a skill is 99.
Right, that's the ceiling.
His total level across all skills is densely packed between 1800 and 2100 out of a massive absolute maximum of 2277. And while he doesn't actively chase those maximum level 99s, they kind of just find him.
Right, he gets 99 construction because it's his operating system. He hits 99 crafting because he falls in love with the mechanics of turning chaos into elegance. He even hits 99 firemaking just because the loop of chopping and burning became a meditative practice for him.
It's almost accidental.
Yeah, these aren't checkboxes he's aggressively ticking off. They are just the natural byproducts of dwelling inside a beautifully designed system.
It's incredible. So to bring this all home for you listening right now, we've just journeyed through the mind of someone who took the absolute most punishing, restrictive constraints of a massive virtual world, and instead of fighting them, he used them.
He harnessed them.
Exactly. He used them to build a perfectly orchestrated machine. And I want you to consider your own daily tasks, your own work, your own routines. Where is the friction in your life, whether it's an overflowing inbox or a disorganized project?
We all have them.
And instead of trying to buy a bigger toolbox to just hide the mess, how could you turn that friction, that inconvenience, into a beautifully designed loop?
This raises an important question about how we all view progress. The average progression in almost any field, whether it's a career, a hobby, or a game, focuses heavily on the external.
The shiny rewards.
Yeah, it focuses on the account level, the job title, the salary. In gaming, it's about getting the max cape, which is the literal wearable trophy you get when you painstakingly max out every single skill in the game to show off to others. But Tommy's progression is entirely internal. He focuses on understanding the mechanics around him to unlock his own creativity.
Exactly. And that brings us to Tommy's final truth. Most players log into their endgame accounts purely to show off that max cape, wear their best gear, and look at their completed goals. But Tommy logs into his endgame account, not to progress, but to experiment.
Just to play.
He logs in to look at this massive, living, breathing system he understands so deeply, and he asks himself, what happens if I change one rule?
He bends the system without breaking it because he knows exactly where the stress points are.
So I leave you with this final thought to mull over. What if the ultimate level of mastery in any field isn't actually reaching a predetermined finish line or getting the max cape? What if true mastery is reaching a point where you are so fluent in the systems around you and so comfortable without a toolbox that you could start breaking your own rules just to see what entirely new worlds you can build from the pieces?